Lui, c'est Joel Edgerton. Vous l'avez déjà vu dans Star Wars, Bright ou Gatsby le Magnifique.
Gatsby.
Et aujourd'hui, il réagit à des gifs sur toute sa carrière.
Wow.
Point gif.
This was an amazing experience, actually. Well, just working with Lucas was so, on Boy Erased, but coming from also being the director, jumping from place to place. But in these scenes with Lucas, I felt like I could really just concentrate on performance. There was a funny day, actually, where I was on set and I was looking around and I said to my DP, Eduardo, I was like, what are we waiting for? And he said, we're waiting for you to put your costume on. And I had to run into a tiny room and I was like, oh yeah, I was the one holding things up. This is actually really interesting because this is in the screenplay, and I think in the finished film, is the moment before the first implication of real violence. And this interesting cut straight to, a gun. I've worked with Sigourney and it's always impressive, and particularly because she's playing a really different character to the warm person that we're used to knowing as Sigourney. But I think working with Paul was fascinating. I think because I've had ideas about Paul since I was a teenager. When I first watched Taxi Driver, and I was just very excited to get a chance to work with him and very flattered. Gatsby. I had the most fun making this film. Just an incredible experience to play a character like Tom Buchanan and to kind of abandon all sense of the feeling of being kind or likable, or, because Tom is such an arrogant, self-entitled bull. However, in my mind, when you dissect Gatsby, Tom, while he might be the most unlikable character, is actually the most honest character. Is the most honest about who he is. Everybody else, I think, is corrupt. Nick is a witness to terrible things, but keeps his mouth shut. Daisy's willing to jump marriage because of, I think, partly for a better situation. And Gatsby has his own secrets. Tom is an honest man. The Green Knight. Again, I think I have fun every time I go to work. I mean, this was so much fun. I got to go to Ireland for a couple of weeks and just, shove a knife in a ball. I usually watch a movie once or twice, sometimes before I do, ADR, voice recording, just so I get a sense. But I'm also paranoid about accent. So I want to watch the whole film and earmark where I feel like my voice is not right for the accent. And usually I'll sit and watch the premiere, like if we go to Venice or Cannes or whatever. But I don't sit around and watch my own movies. The final shot of Star Wars Episode 3 is interesting for a number of reasons. One is I find it strange to look at myself. Two is this was a fantasy of mine come true. A fantasy I didn't even know I had, to be in Star Wars. The fantasy was that I just loved the movies. But to then become an actor at the right time, at the right age, to be allowed to play a character in Star Wars was just mind-blowing. But the other interesting thing is my part of this that you're seeing here, I'm on my own on a green screen soundstage shooting during a pickup shot because I wasn't able to be there for this scene. So Bonnie and I aren't actually in the same room. I'm so glad that I came back and did Kenobi. And even when it came up, I was like, should I go and do this? And then I was like, and I've said this before, I mean, the earlier Star Wars films created so much opportunity for me, that knowing how every situation in your life leads on to every other situation, every person you encounter, I was really happy to go back and I had a wonderful time, and it was sort of a reunion of sorts, and also a chance to kind of put a different dimension on a character that I think a lot of people look at and feel like he's just some, the expression, stick in the mud. Loving. Talking about watching a film, Jeff showed me Loving for the first time, and it's one of the only films I've ever been in where I had a really deep emotional response to the film. I can't really describe it too much. I think when I watch a film that I'm in, I'm like, my ego's involved. I'm thinking about what I did right, what I did wrong. You're remembering the shoot. All sorts of things pollute the ability just to enjoy or watch the story. Loving completely allowed me to be an audience member, and I'm even talking about it now, it's a very special movie, and I think one of the best overall films that I've ever been involved in. Oh man, I just love Ridley Scott so much, and I love Christian, and this entire experience was wonderful. I do look at this and I still feel a little out of place. It's a longer conversation. Netflix. This is me, strangely, this is like my superhero movie. Well, I've always been sort of reluctant to be part of, like, you know, big movies, spectacle movies. And not because I frown on them, I like watching them, but I don't know how to be a part of them. My imagination works well for me in drama and, you know, on a set where I can see and feel and touch things. And I'm very nervous when I'm on a green screen and I don't know what is there. Like, I'm imagining something that will be put in there later. I'm not that kind of an actor, I don't think. I'm not good at that. But Bright felt to me like it would be part of a big movie, but also hidden under a mask, that it could be me, but it's also not me, and that it was a chance to kind of be a clown, play a naive clown. And I loved, this movie was very traumatic for me because of the makeup. I had a really hard time, and I think, you know, you talk about actors who have done lots of prosthetic work, a lot of them will say the same thing. They don't really know what they've gotten into. I think I was in this makeup for about 65 days, you know, for like sometimes 14 or 15 hours a day. It's quite confronting and claustrophobic, and you can't take it off. And I had a really tough time with that. But this film, between action and cut, was one of the most fun characters I've ever played. Between action and cut. 13 Lives, very special. I was about to become a father for the first time. So the whole time we're shooting this film, and in fact, 1 week before we finished shooting, my babies came. And the film was so much about the responsibility and the care of children that it became quite overwhelming for me as we were getting sort of towards the end of the shoot, and I was very nervous about, you know, the birth. And I'm just the dad, I'm not the mum. And then I shot, the babies came, and then the following week I had to go back and just finish like 4 days. If we sat and watched the whole film, I could show you which scenes I shot before and which scenes I shot after. And it was very hard on one particular day to keep myself from getting too overwhelmed by things. I think it's one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Konbini!